The following is a talk given by Vernon Howard to an audience of men only.
If you think, as many of you do, that sex is the overwhelming, most important thing in life, you will act upon that assumption, premise. Now, since it is a wrong assumption, you're going to be in an awful lot of trouble. And as proof of that, you not only have been, but you are. Every one of you, in one way or another, are in trouble sexually speaking. Well, let's name a few. Mama's boys here listening to me, how can you have a right love relationship, sex relationship with a woman that you allow to dominate you? And she dominates you if you want sex more than you want truth. Now you just think inside your own minds as I'm talking, and you had better be horrified. Gentlemen, remember the time you went down to the quick service food station down there in the boulevard where there are a bunch of other people? You were all alone. This is your biography, one of them. And you went in, you got your drink and your fish sandwich or whatever you wanted, and you went outside and you sat at one of the little tables, and there she was, right? And all alone too. About your age, pretty, your type, you're lonely. You haven't had sex for 3 days, and you'd like to pick her up, huh? You're so asleep spiritually, you don't know. The first glance at that woman, pretty woman, no denying the fact she's pretty and shapely. Your physical eyes tell you that. Your first glance at that woman, and you have sinned. How about using that word for a little bit? You know what it means. The first thought that comes to your sex-centered mind, sex-overwhelmed mind and emotions is, I wonder, look, don't lie to me. I wonder if I could get her into bed. Let's see, that was Monday. Tuesday, a little different circumstance, huh? This time it was you work at that big factory or big building, and you didn't even know she existed in there. You'd been working there for 3 years, and for the first time you realized she'd worked way out there on the other side of the yard and had very little occasion to come over. But once she had an occasion to deliver some papers that were out of her territory, but she was doing something for someone. She's been there all these years. And I missed my opportunity with her. Wednesday, on and on and on. Can you understand that this is what is known as a life of horror? What kind of a life is that where you have to lust after every woman? See, you might be quite skilled, gentlemen, in the sexual act itself, and I'm sure with a certain amount of experience you would be. You know what to do. You know how to get her into the bedroom, get her clothes off, things like that. You know how to do that. I sit here and wonder what you're doing here in this class or what you're doing here on this earth when that is your idea of life fulfillment. This is called daily hell from Sunday through Saturday. This is called being a madman. And I'll tell you something else in case no one ever told you. This is called being a vicious human being. that getting that woman in the bedroom and having what you call fun with her for an hour or two, that is your idea of what life is all about. And this is the very idea which overwhelms every man on earth. Unless he happens to be a homosexual, which is even worse, or if he's a man who has other deviant forms of sex practices, which I won't go into, and I'll explain that in a minute too. What do you value most of all while you are seated here right now? If you examine yourself, you will find in relationships to women that what you value most of all is to be able to pick up all the women in the world and have sex with every one of them. Maybe you get tired of one after 2 nights, you can go on to the next one. This is your idea of conquest. This is your idea of what it means to live a full, active life. And for the entire universe and beyond it, I wouldn't trade places with a mind like yours. Because I know what it's like. And I know that you have nothing of value in this life, therefore you will have nothing of value after this physical life. It just so happens, gentlemen, that sex is not salvation. It just so happens that romance and having women flock about you, are you getting all the women you want? It just so happens that that is not the purpose for which you were put here on earth. Now, I want to explain something to you that I did with the women at the very start, because it applies equally with men. And I'll start a little farther back than I did with them, a little bit farther back. There are 2 kinds of wrong sex. Homosexuality, which a man lusts after a man or a woman after a woman, which is sickening, which is repulsive, which is an abomination unto God. And a homosexual is a very violent human being. Being a very sick human being is a very violent human being. So that's that. Now on to another thing. And I explained in brief to the ladies, there's another form of aberration sexually, which is simply wrong sex in any other way. Even with a woman, you can have wrong sex with a woman performing certain acts. Again, I can't go into the detail, but you may know what they are. Maybe you've read books, or you have been so low to engage in wrong kinds of sex with a woman. It's normal to have sex with a woman, but it's normal to have normal sex with a woman, which is simply normal sex. And if you don't know what that is, then you'd better come to every class. All right, now in us discussing sex here, sex, as I told the ladies, the sex part of you is a very personal, sacred center inside you. Sex in itself, like everything else, in its originality, is pure. Nature gave you a sex center and gave you the sex drive in order to reproduce the human race. And sex also, the sex center also includes in it, as a reward for perpetuating the human race, it gives you the reward of the climax of the sexual experience, right? The thrill of it, you know what that is. This is one reason, not the whole reason, one reason why you want so badly to have sex, because you want to experience this intense thrill. And I did explain to the ladies, and I'll explain to you, that this is not really a thrill coming from the emotional parts or from the mental parts or even from the physical part of you. It's none of those 3 primarily. The thrill you receive, gentlemen, in sexual relations during their climax is a purely sexual thrill. As I said, it's a reward. See, you want that, right? So nature gives you the reward. Now you keep the human race going, which is nature's plan. But this thrill that you have can, like a desire to be rich and famous, a desire to have a power, the desire for the thrill, the sexual thrill, that desire for it can also become the monster, the dominating part in you. And how are you going to do that? Have this thrill every day if possible without going up and wrecking some woman's life in order to get it, or engaging in any kind of wrong sexual activities in order to get this normal thrill. And so, because you're confused in your other parts, the confusion of your emotional parts, the confusion of your intellectual parts, it will spread to your sex center and distort its purity at its source, its original pureness, and now you're gone. Coming out of the hot dog standing, seeing that pretty woman there, and then the next day seeing the girl down at the office. Would you agree that this is a life of torment? You know, I watch you men with those ladies down the stairs. Do you know that I see you being tormented? You don't? Isn't that curious? I'm sitting as an observer in that chair down there, and quick glances. I see you being tormented by looking at those girls dancing down there. I see something that you don't see. Why don't you see it? Now let's talk about the horrible results of you being mixed up sexually and thinking that your salvation, thinking that your fulfillment, thinking that your sense of self can be satisfied by getting every woman in the block. Here's what happens when you are wrong like that. What a horrible, terrible man you are. Oh, those words are so mild. I'm going to have to rethink that sentence and put it over again. What a monstrous creature from dark regions you are, to only care about one thing, your thrill of the moment, and you don't care a bit about what happens to her. If she gets pregnant and she's not married to you, then that's her problem, huh? If she gets pregnant and she doesn't know what to do, why should you help her? You're gone off to Connecticut and she's in California. Don't you dare sit there and tell me that you wouldn't do that, because I know better. You do that to 1,000 women because you have no decency at all. You have no conscience at all. All you know is what you want from her. Gentlemen, how can I tell you that you've missed the mark of life? Now, did you ever hear me say, you have never heard me say, that it's wrong to have sex with a woman, wrong to have a woman? You know that, so let's get that out of the way. Have you ever heard of such a thing as really loving a woman? And I'm not talking about just, do you know that if you love one woman, you love every woman on earth? Yes, in a different way, of course, including that older woman or that woman that isn't at all pretty to you. She's not attractive. I'm talking about you being a real man first instead of a sex machine. So that a woman, if she has a problem and it worked out right and she's not taking advantage of you or something, she could ask you about something, she could ask your advice about something, and you'd be able to give her sensible advice. I told the women just a short time ago, it is natural, it is put into every woman to want to go to a man, to want to ask his advice, for her to want him to help her. That pretty woman sitting at that outdoor cafe a few yards from you, you're keeping an eye on her out of the corner of your eye. Maybe she'll be interested in you too, and she'll give you the slightest smile, you'll make your move, right? You're waiting for you. You don't even know how to handle a woman. All right. And she fumbles in her purse, and this isn't an act on her part. She really can't find her car keys. And she fumbles around, and she knows she lives 50 miles from home. She just got out of work real late or something. Now she has to go way out there, and it's kind of late at night, but she was hungry, and she had to stop before the long drive home. And it's getting a little dark, and she doesn't like to drive at night. And she really can't find her car keys, and she gets panicky. She's locked her car over there in the lot a little bit. How's she going to get home? And she looks around, and it is getting dark and a little cool and windy, and you just happen to be the only one out there, and even the cafe looks like it's closing for the night. Got the picture, Sarah? And she looks over at you, and you know she's in distress, and you can maybe figure out it's her car keys. She can't find them. You dirty, low down, I can't think of words lower, too low to describe you. That poor woman has lost her keys, and she's terrified. And in a minute, she's going to look at you and very timidly and very, very scared come over and look at you and ask her if you could help her get into her car and maybe find a spare key or something. Could you help her because she's lost her keys and can't get home? And remember, gentlemen, all the lust of your 30, 40, 50 years has been building up. That half hour you've been sitting there watching her, and now is your golden opportunity. You low down scum of the earth. That's what you are. There's no words I could use that would describe how low you are for what you just planned when she came over there. Maybe I can use it to get her into the bedroom. And you even write the scenario out, don't you, in your mind? You even wrote it out before she was distressed. Well, she comes over, and I offer to drive her home and then bring her back in the morning. We'll get a locksmith. But in some way you plan to, you scum of the earth, you plan to do something for her so that she now owes you something. You've done it! You've done it in your heart if you haven't done it physically. That's how low you are. That's what monster you are. And we'll leave it right there. We'll leave it with your horrible wish to take advantage of, see, you don't have any goodness. You don't have any, I wonder how many men she would sit there and be aware that she's fumbling a little bit out of common looking around and seeing. And you'd even sense that she's in trouble, and she's going to come over and say, "Sir, I've lost my key, and it's dark out here, and they're closing the cafe. I don't see a policeman around." She's terrified to even ask you. She doesn't know what a monster or what a deviate you might be. See, she's scared of you. And she'd better be. It's instinctive partly too, isn't it? So she comes over. Where are you going to find a man of truth, of decency, who's been through this experience so many times, and he saw what a monster he was, that all he wants to do eventually, after his little games, is to get her back in her bedroom of her home. How horrible. Where are we going to find one man who would understand himself, who would see the temptations from way back, the devil behind the 12th tree, and be so wide awake and so alert and say, "Oh no, I have been vicious long enough. I have been cruel long enough. I have been a monster long enough to women, and I'm not going to take advantage of her. I can't afford it anymore. I can't afford it anymore." See, you don't even have sense enough to put your own self first, your only true self first. You don't have brains enough to do that. All you want is another sex experience, a quick thrill, so that you can affirm, quote Marx, that you're a real man and a real lover and real exciting and very attractive to a woman. You devil from hell, look what you did to that woman, even if you succeeded. even if she was so terrified, more terrified of the night than of you, something worse happening to her than meeting you. Maybe there's nothing worse happening to her that could happen to her than meeting you. Question again is, gentlemen, when are you going to start being a good man toward women? Not wanting to take advantage of them? I'll tell you when. I'll go back to the two tables there. You're seated outside there. And you see her come over, and you can look at her, you know she's scared. And you know, gentlemen, that 10 years ago, you would have said, I've got it. She even smiled at me. It's just a question of time. I'll use my usual smooth techniques, that you've used so many times before, right, man? You know, I know you. And you get her in the bedroom. Not this time. You've made contact with something above your sex center, that drive to prove yourself. You're beginning to wake up. And she comes over, and there is not 1 ounce of lust in you to take her, to hurt her, to take advantage of her, to get her into bed and run, hit and run, huh? That's what you are. You're a hit and run artist. You low-down scums. She comes over, and you're wide awake. And she says, I've lost the keys to my car. Can you help me? And the only thing you think of is, how can I help this lady in distress? It's normal to help someone. They have a little problem. She doesn't know what to do, and you tell her she's scared. And so you go only into your intellectual center, not into your sex center at all. And you think, well, let's see. I have a special key in my car. It could work out in a dozen different ways, couldn't it? But you have a special key that fits all cars because you used to work in a garage and you had a key for every car. You remember that you put it back in your glove compartment. It's been there. Oh, just a minute, miss. I think I may be able to help you. Just a minute, please. And you walk over your car, and there it is. And you go over to the car. You don't even come back to her, but you know she's watching and all is well. You go back to the car, and sure enough, it works. And you give her the key, you call her all over, and you don't forget this, gentlemen. Women, they really do need your reassurance. They're counting on your reassurance. They're not very strong. They want you to be strong for them. Are you going to fail them because you failed yourself? No, in this case you haven't. You begin to wake up. And so you smile at her, not a smile of look how nice I am, how about under the bedclothes, but simply because you know that she's scared. And it's for you. Don't you smile? A little child comes up and he talks whatever he talks about, and you smile a little, just pleasantly. Well, the same with a woman. And so you smile at her and you say, now, here, I've tested this key in the ignition. It works. Take the key and drive home. You don't have to give it back. Just keep it, and tomorrow you can get a locksmith, or maybe you left your keys somewhere else, and you can get it, and you'll be all right. Okay? Now, I will watch, miss, and see that you're off safely. So you just get in there and turn the key, and you'll see that it works just like your normal key. And I'll sit over here and watch you. Okay? And she'll smile very gratefully to you, and she'll get in, she'll back up, and she'll go away, and you'll watch. She's even reassured that she's not going to be stuck out there, that the car will stop. And you watch for a little bit, and she gives you a little wave, and she's wondering how, what a miracle that she ever met a man who didn't use it to make a pass at her. Even your smile, she could sense that your smile was one of reassurance, not one of conning her into thinking that you were nice so that she would agree to the bedroom. That woman is going to go away there from that parking lot. I wonder if maybe there is something. I wonder if maybe there is something higher than I've ever experienced before. If there is such a thing in a man that is higher than him just wanting to get inside of me. That's all you'll ever be able to do for that woman. That's not the point. Oh, what you have done for yourself. Oh, what you have done for your inner nature. And I guarantee you, when you go away from there, when you get in your car and drive away, you won't know this reward, what I'm talking about, because you've never had it. But I will tell you what it is. I'll describe it with words, and then you can go on from the verbal description to the experience, if you're man enough to go. When you get in your car and you drive on home yourself, in the first place, you won't think about that girl at all. Remember now, she was very pretty, very shapely, and very attractive to you, the male part of you. But the male part of you did not take you over. You drive home, you just think briefly about it. Maybe you see her car lights, back lights disappear around the corner. You know she's safe and on the way. You forget about that. And you know what you do for the rest of the drive home? You're aware you're driving your car. You see my hands this right hand is clenched a little tighter than the one there, so I'll make them both even. Now I'm aware of my hands. And the little thought comes back to the girl, how scared she was. And there's part of you that's grateful, that's glad that you were able to lift her fear a little bit without being egotistical. You saw, because you know that the only thing that can lift fear in that woman or in anyone else or in you is God himself, and you go home thankful to God Almighty. That's how you drive home. That experience can be yours if you're willing to sacrifice trash, which is your horrible, mixed up, confused, depraved sexual aberrations. Aberrations simply means something horribly wrong with you. Right? You can have your old nature as you are now and suffer the hell of it, calling it heaven. Boy, I'll tell you how stupid you are. There's no way to describe your stupidity. You can have that, or you can begin life afresh. And starting off to think differently toward women because you're beginning to change yourself is a marvelous place to start. You can start anywhere. You can start with your anger. You can start with your lust for money. You can start with your relationships with women. You can start with all of them if you want, because you include all of them in. But sex and love and romance, being such a powerful thing, is a marvelous place to start. So you catch yourself with wrong lusts down there. Catch yourself in daydreams. I'll give you an assignment, men. The next time you have the experience I described, and you know what I'm talking about, it could happen anywhere, anytime, experience about you seeing a pretty girl and going to imagination about you meeting her and bedding her, I want you to remember everything you've heard today. Now I want you to simply remember there is something higher than that, but you'll see it only when you sacrifice that. Sacrifice is always necessary. You must sacrifice the lower which you treasure. You treasure your trash. You must sacrifice the lower to have something higher. And once you have the higher, you won't be tormented anymore as you now are by the lower. Our time is up for now. Well, as I told the ladies, we'll take questions at the next banquet instead of a straight talk, all right? And the ladies will have questions too. Okay.
The following is a talk given by Vernon Howard to an audience of women only.
The topic of sex is a very private and very personal matter. Naturally so. Nature made it that way. And you have to understand this so that you can understand that there is a sexual center in both male and female which is very sacred as a sex center. You'll understand what I mean by it being sacred. a little later. Society as it is now shows nothing sacred about anything, including sex, which accounts for sex jokes, wrong jokes about sex, laughing at it as if it is a topic of humor, which it is not. There isn't one of you ladies here who has ever laughed about sex. You may think you did, but you understand somewhere down inside what a powerful thing it is. Therefore, having this power, emotional, and plain old sex power in itself, how it can lead you astray unless you understand it, and it has led you astray. Now, I started to say before we had to start all over that even in this group where I am talking to you, just ladies alone here now, I can only go so far, and I know where that point is, in talking to you about sex, because if I go over it, that would be intrusion into your private sex center, which is sacred to you. Now here's what I mean. It's very hard to explain, but here it is. Nature has given every human being certain things that he or she knows about, should discuss only with himself and with truth. Never with any other human being. And I'll prove it to you. A lot of you ladies have been or are married. And you've had sex thousands of times with your husband. Now, here it is, the actual physical act itself. Many, many times, the physical act. In spite of that, intimacy over and over again. Haven't you noticed, if you had a crude husband, how you resented certain things that he might have said or attempted to say, certain things about, look, he's your husband, you had him all these years. You resented certain things because the right part of you related to sex rose up and said, oh no, you, sir, stop here. I'm not going to laugh at that joke. I'm not going to go along with that obsession or that aberration of sex that you're talking about. And men are terrible. You should know that. You've associated with them. They're horrible. They're crude. All right. And you, in order to hold him, maybe, ladies, did go along one way or another with something that violated the sacredness of your sex life, of you as a woman. Now here's we're getting close to the problem now. No man ever has a right to tempt you, to lead you, first of all, lead you into any kind of sex except plain old normal sex, and you should know what that is. If you don't, then we'll have to have a lot of classes in order to tell you. How many of you don't know what average normal sex is? How many of you do? You sense it? You watch in this world how the whole world is trying, and it's much deeper than you think, trying to draw you away from what is sacred in you. That's the first thing to remember, that your sex center is sacred to you and you alone. And you must, under no circumstances, let a man violate it. Let's find out why he does. When you came to the world, you were born a physical human being with a natural sex center. You weren't born very wise, were you? You weren't born with intelligence, and neither was the man. No wonder when you get to be 15, 16 and on up, and the boy and the girl meet, they get into all kind of trouble with each other because they're immature. Now you grow up, and nature has put into every one of you girls a yearning, a proper yearning to have a man. a proper yearning to lean on a man. A proper right yearning for you to want the man to make the decisions for you. You know, in an average situation. And why do you ever get mixed up with a man who won't make the decisions? That's because you find one hard to find, I know that. Here's the problem then. Here's one part of you that naturally says, okay, sir, I have a nature that says sex is all right. Nature put sex feeling into you to perpetuate the human race, right? If you didn't have it and the man didn't have it, the race would die out. We know that. So you have a feeling to want to yield yourself sexually to the man. Believe me, that's natural, right? Normal. But look at the difficulty. The difficulty is you don't put the sacredness of your sex center first. If you did, you would never get sexually in trouble with a man in any way at all. You get in trouble with a man because you're lonely. You get in trouble with a man because you say, I want someone to make the decisions for me, which is right in itself. But you won't find a higher rightness with truth, which is stronger than any center. You have a mind, you have feelings, you have a physical body, you have sex impulses. And look, for example, how you yield your thoughts to a man. Oh, you poor, foolish ladies, simply because he's nice looking, or he's charming, or he's going to take care of you financially. See, how many of you ladies here have ever been in this position, and we could find hundreds of them, where you're broke, really, financially broke? What are you, 20 years old and out of high school or college or whatever? 20 years old and no money, and you go out and you try to find work. It's hard maybe or whatever. And in your heart you hope that the boss or the assistant boss is going to marry you and take away from you the responsibility of getting money in order to live. The decision to put financial security first is your doom. You know, I've said so many times, and I've talked to the men about this. What difference does it make if all you have is the roof and a loaf of bread? God himself doesn't require any more of you than that. So why, if you were in contact with truth, do you go through the strain and the pain of saying, I must have a man? All right, you can have one if you want, and you can sell your soul. Now look, you have never, and I don't know anything about your private sex life or marriage life in the past. Don't any of you here tell me, because you can't kid me, none of you, you have never been content or happy when you had that man. Come on, admit it. And you went from one to another, didn't you? Why are you asking for more? Now look, I said at the start, it's right to have a yearning for a man. You know what that yearning has to be matched by? It has to be matched by your insight into a man who at least is beginning to want what you want, which is the truth. You have no business, none at all, getting yourself associated, I'll use this word, you'll understand, with a non-believer. I wonder if any of you ladies in this group, and I'm not going to ask you about it, this is your private life, but I will warn you against it. Any of you ladies who go out into the world and pick up men, I don't know why you come to this class if you do that. I'm wondering what you are putting first. So now we've come come to this conclusion so far. I know you want a man, and I told you that that's right for you to want to put yourself under his leadership, under his guidance. Oh, didn't anyone tell you that this is a sick world? Didn't anyone tell you that men are animals? Haven't you found that out for yourself? I'm telling you something. And you listen to me, and you young people, or anybody people, you'll save yourself years of grief if you listen to me. You keep, and I'll add another word this time to generalize it a little more. You keep your sex center, sexual life, you keep your love life, the capacity for it. You keep that sacred, which means you put the integrity of it first. You put that before anything else. And I guarantee you absolutely that all problems with men will end whether you have one or don't have one. I told you before, and you nodded your heads, that you have difficulties with men the way you are now. You have difficulties with men whether you have one or not. If you don't have one, where am I going to find one? And you have your ideals. He has a lot of money, and he doesn't bother you too much. You have all these ideals. You're not happy with your ideals. Remember, we spoke about that the other night. Don't you sort of dread, listen to this, I'll get you on this one. Don't you sort of dread the saying again of, I do? And even if you have a sexual relationship with a man out of marriage, that's exactly the same thing. You know what the I do stands for? I do put the false comfort of your pseudo-strength before God. Now, look, how's your values? Let's find out. How long are you here on earth? A few years, huh? Comparatively.